and welcome to this next edition of the Value Exchange podcast. I'm Annabelle Lambert, and I'm here with my regular co-host, Rob Pye. Say hello, Rob Pye.
Morning, both.
We are delighted today to be with an old friend, a former colleague, Elisa. I never know how to pronounce your surname. I'm ashamed. I'm going to say
you're getting
Tuijnder.
closer every year. Every year you're getting closer.
Yeah, I feel I've got a little bit of Swedish heritage, and I know you're not Swedish, you're Belgian, but there's similarities. I feel. So delighted to be with Elisa, who spent some time working with us a few years ago, setting up her own organisation called Sardines, and which was all about inclusive events. I'm sure we'll touch on this in her story, but she was a wonderful, wonderful supporter and mentor to many of our young leaders as well during that period of lockdown, and is now doing other much exciting things. So Elisa, tell us who you are, where you are, what you're about, and anything you wish to share.
How long have we got in this podcast to go about this? Yeah, so you already touched upon it. I'm originally from Belgium. My daddy is actually from the Netherlands. We are a very international family. My stepmom's from Germany. My brothers lived in Chile. My sister lived in America. So we've already have that sort of internationality from the start. And I started studying history at first, really liked that, but didn't see the many career prospects with that. But I still think I got some good analytical skills and those kind of things in from that. And then moved to the Netherlands and did a master's in international relations. And with that, actually, it was a 2 years master, ended up also in the UK, where I ended up being for over 10 years. Also got to work for the University of Birmingham for a long time with that. Got to learn about a lot of things there, especially working with research centers in Africa and across the globe, really. And then when the pandemic hit, was looking for something with what I was already doing, but slightly different. Wanted to kind of become more professional in it. And then all of a sudden Rob called me and it's, hello, I might be able to help you with what you're doing. We see value in this. And that was fantastic. And then I got to spend a few amazing years, or a year and a half. How long was it in the end? I don't know. With you guys before we ended up moving on with other things. And now I'm in Berlin. So God knows where I'm going to be next in the future. But as you can see, quite moved a lot already, seen a lot already, worked for a lot of different people already. But I think that's one of those things that happens with people that are in the end you can always see that that's how they all fitted together. At the moment you were on the path, it was maybe like why was I doing this, this all this meandering, but sometimes it all comes together and it makes sense why we're there or why we did something. And that's great.
So we're interested in sort of starting in the middle,
sure.
and then maybe going back and then up to date. Because
why not?
Was it Leslie? I think we were introduced to
Leslie.
You by was it a lady called Leslie, and Leslie was introduced to us because of a venture called Team Police, which is about raising funds for well-being for physical activity for the police. 300,000 people and well-being, and Leslie was one of the sponsors or potential sponsors, and she said, I know this amazing woman called Elisa, and you must meet her because she's doing all these hybrid event stuff, University of Birmingham, and we've got quite a few University of Birmingham connects. We're looking at talking, we're taking on a couple of master's students from Korea, from the university, and they're international students, and they need some work experience. So more and more academic organizations are looking at the interface between work and study.
Which I would just add, originally it has come from your introduction, Elisa, not through that lady, through someone else in a totally different department, but that's where it all started. So thank you for that. Next week we've made it. How many years ago is that?
It takes a little while in the bureaucracy of big institutions, right?
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, but so the university, and then my middle
Oh
son,
yeah.
University of Berkeley. So there's sort of like bits of the and there is a university ecosystem, of course, which is all about young people. So when we get onto young leaders, but if we start at Birmingham and the international events and Africa, which sort of links to our current interest. We have a global project called the Commons Funds, which is basic income for projects all over the world. So we are the funder, and we've got, South African project, Valley Rewa, something in Argentina, something in Brazil, sort of a global ecosystem. So I just wonder if you could start in the middle, tell us about the Birmingham and what you were doing, the events there, and the
Yeah.
Africa and the
Yeah,
social
actually, so
justice
it
angle.
started all working for, well, I was obviously there first as an Erasmus student. That's how I made all of the contacts, and I ended up being there as an Erasmus intern.
Then for those that haven't heard, Erasmus, for those that haven't
Yeah,
heard,
Erasmus
what's
was
Erasmus and
was
what was
is
the UK?
depending on where you are in the world, this amazing project whereby students from university were allowed to go and study either 6 months or a year or under. It was actually quite flexible at a different university, and the idea was that a student from that university then went to the other university. It was really an exchange program, so they send one, they got one back. And that's how a lot of mobility happened in the European Union, and still happens in the European Union. Unfortunately, the United Kingdom has, with leaving Brexit, also decided to leave the Erasmus program. Has instated something in its place, but it's very limited in comparison to what Erasmus used to do. And that's how, a lot of people got to.
Another benefit of Brexit, another piece of
Yeah,
self-destruct that the
yeah.
UK has achieved.
Because
Well done.
Yeah, well done,
it's
us.
one
Sorry,
of
yeah,
those things
yeah.
that they're now really starting to be able to evaluate as well, of how many people move to different countries, how much understanding is there of different cultures, or at least within Europe, because of it, and who stayed to support what economy. And Erasmus has a massive impact actually within the European Union around this. Anyways, that's how I was there, and I didn't really want to go back. I loved Birmingham. I loved England in general. I was really enjoying my time there. And then one of the colleagues that I'd gotten to know basically had had something coming up, had a job role coming up, and I was like, okay, let's try it, let's go for it. And with my experience, because my master thesis did a lot of research in Congo, in the DRC, and she needed somebody with some experience of working with colleagues in Africa, and I ended up there working for a big project in Nigeria, whereby she was looking into the areas that have high Christian and Muslim populations, but where I want to try and say this in a good way, where there's very little conflict between them, where they have naturally, when we think about lots of Muslims and Christians living together, that would bring some problems because of what we've seen over the last few years and what we see in world politics. But actually, there is lots of areas in the world where they have been peacefully coexisting for quite a long time. So the idea was to go there and kind of pull out the metrics and pull out the ideas and talk to the people on the ground on why is it working there very well, and why is it not working in other parts of the world. And that's how I got to start organizing events in Africa then, and kind of working with multiple research centers who were also doing similar things. And when that project ended, which was also a EU funded project, an ERC project, somebody asked, they needed somebody to organize what is called the ASA UK, the African Studies Association of the United Kingdom, which is also, again, a big conference that's held every 2 years. And this year was going to be held, or the next year, it was going to be held in Birmingham. And again, you needed somebody with some experience with working with different cultures, with working with colleagues in Africa, also because of the visa processes, etc., because the hostile environment doesn't allow it very easily to get colleagues to come over. So somebody with some with some knowledge around that was wanted, and that's how I got that job. Ended up organizing a conference of almost 1,000 people, and then started rolling into other conferences with different backgrounds, and not just with African colleagues, etc., and just kind of academic conferences with an international flair. Let's say it like that.
So interesting. So you could kind of, we talk about the conferencing, but we could also talk about the multicultural integrate. So you've got a multicultural family. You end up, you're in the middle of your career there in Birmingham, and you're looking at Congo, Nigeria, and Christians, Muslims not killing each other. So let's develop that a little bit. So what did you find, and how did the conferences play in agenda terms in kind of that context? Because it's a fascinating subject that I'm sure is not going to go away anytime soon. But what was the sort of thrust of the multicultural bit behind it? What did you learn? What were you trying to find out?
But the biggest thing that you learn, and you don't need to necessarily learn that from organizing conferences or doing all these complicated things, is that everyone's exactly the same. Like, I learned this honestly, like, yes, there are cultural differences. There are obviously cultural differences, but we tend to, I think we tend to make those bigger than they actually are. When you travel a lot, when you work a lot with people from all over the world, you just realize that they all have the same problems as you, and they all think about things often the same way. And that is a really magical binder, because if I hear my grandma speak, or whatever, like, she would ask me very silly questions sometimes about places where I would go, having these very different perceptions about them, and perceptions that not necessarily through fault of her own. These are culturally been, so for centuries actually been pushed into us and pushed into people, about East bad, people in Africa live in huts, like these kind of this is really bad cliches that are being perpetuated through people, and that they're but if you just actually spend any time, that doesn't necessarily be on the ground, which is easier, but and which which allows you to really experience it. But anything actually really comes down to, we're all the same people across this earth. And yes, some people like spaghetti more, or some people like this more, or have a holiday there and a holiday there. But it's, in the end, it all boils down to very much the same thing. And that's what always, what I always kind of noticed time and time again.
There's a lot of wisdom in that. We interviewed somebody or just got a story, who met and spent some time with Nelson Mandela, who said that it's easy to focus on the differences and to become annoyed and frustrated about. It's much more difficult to find the similarities and focus on actually what we've got in common and how we use that to actually solve problems. This is from Nelson Mandela. Annabelle, you said to me this morning, didn't you, about, we did a little meeting last night with countries, different places in the world, that what was it, you were surprised by?
No, I'm always surprised by how, when you bring people together like that, there is always a connection. There's always very rarely is there somebody who's feeling, oh, this isn't, not for me. Because of course we've done a lot of groundwork behind bringing these people together. We're on a mission, but it was a first meeting for these people, and it's always shocks me, but is a wonderful thing where people go, ooh, people, that are similar to me in many ways, doing very different things, but we're all on this mission to, help
Yeah.
the world, so
Yeah,
it's just it's shocking
Yeah.
still that we still do that, that's still going on, that we're all amazed that we
yeah.
can't help each
And the
other.
best advice.
It's
And so there was, an older, elderly person who was working with people who had been in prison, and somebody
Mm,
from South Africa, somebody from the Lebanon. We had projects, South America, and then north of
yeah,
England,
yeah.
deprived communities, and actually there was this sort of like, oh, we could all help each other, couldn't we? It's
Yeah. So
so so uh, so here we are. We're in Birmingham. We're learning that everybody's pretty similar,
Yeah, I was, I was,
culturally,
yeah, I was laying
and
emphasis
then
on that. Or I find, if I found, I mean, it wasn't a revelation for me because I think I was traveling a lot, but
it's in,
I think the best, really reading on from what you said there earlier, Rob, like what we do. The best advice I recently got, which was totally out of context for this, was when you're mixing things with music, whatever, we always tend to focus on the things that aren't working, but we don't emphasize enough of the things that are working. And I thought that was so good for the rest of us as well. That doesn't just work in mixing a tape or a band or whatever, making a song, focusing on the good things, and then the same thing, focusing on the fact that we're all humans and not the differences is yeah, that's so important.
yeah. Well, that's magic. Nelson Mandela and Elisa, you heard it here. So we this mad person, this mad person called Rob
Yeah.
Pye then approaches you and has got this young leaders thing, and then so what's that all about? What's young leaders?
Yeah.
What is
So
Sardines all about?
because I was working with many, okay, because the UK, for maybe people who are listening that are not from England, has a thing that's called the hostile environment, which actually says that it makes it hard for people from different cultures often, or for there's no actual list of countries, but I can guess which countries are having a harder time getting a visa than others, as well as for people who are already in the UK, making it hard for them to live here, etc., so that they would go back home. But predominantly for us, for me, working with a number of people who would want to come to the UK to come to a conference, to come to do a talk, a research seminar, a workshop, etc., etc. We often had the money for that, because we had grants or anything like that, and we had the availability. We wanted to get them to come over here to do a master class or something like that, but they were often denied visas. And you would be surprised how often high-end professors from anywhere in the world will be denied visas because trivial things you often don't even know why. And once you have one or two rejections, it gets harder and harder because then the justification is you've been rejected before. And anyways, because of that, before the pandemic already, I started really looking into different ways of connecting people, and that predominantly through the internet. And I think it's almost hard for us to imagine pre-pandemic that it was, yeah, that we weren't using Skype, that we weren't a Skype, that we weren't using Zoom, and using any of these like sort of electronic means of teaching. And um, yeah, that people were very hesitant about it and very, yeah, almost told us like that's not possible. You cannot, you can't learn anything just from a screen, etc., etc. And with the but because these professors and these, sometimes also the other way around, students from that from universities that we were working together with not being able to join us physically, we needed to constantly find, or I needed to find new ways of connecting them and making sure that we had that information exchange, that value exchange, that people could do that in a different way. So I was sort of researching this, looking into this, pre-pandemic, and looking to see how I could help as many people as possible, very much as a side project at that time, and consulting a little bit on very international conferences. And then the pandemic hit, and it was like, oh, good morning. Everyone needs this now. I have something to say around this. So let's see where we go. And it still took about a year into the pandemic, right? Because I still worked for the university for a year, managed to do a few very successful fully virtual conferences at that point. Also gained confidence because of that, like, hey, it's possible, the things are here. And then thought, let's go at this alone and see what we can do. And then I was lucky enough to be put into your bubble nest, which was very lovely. And
So the context was that Elisa collided with another project that at the time was called Young Leaders, where we were using a basic income. We had 65 people, and there was an opportunity for Elisa to mentor, to support a team. I think it was one of the biggest team of young leaders that we had. Maybe a dozen or a number of people. So what was the experience? And many of these people had either worked in hospitality or had degrees or didn't have degrees, but didn't really have work experience. So they were given the opportunity to define their own work. What is it you'd like to experience? And so you kind of had this team of really enthusiastic people with no work experience, and it was from looking from the outside of the project, it was one of the most successful projects in the pandemic, because the young people just loved it, loved everything about that. It was such a high energy project. So do you want to sort of talk from the inside out? If I maybe you give me a different story. Maybe it was hell.
Absolutely not. I think something very funny happened there, actually. The thing I take away the most from my time with you guys is the young leader side of things, the people that I worked with them. And I think it was good, as well as a bit of a problem for for me, as in, like, it kind of actually made me not focus on the work as much. I focused so much on our young leaders and their stories and how to help them, that I think I might have actually forgotten a little bit how to be the product owner at times. But that aside,
And you weren't alone. Annabelle and I would often tell our story as this was the most joyous, wonderful, draining, intense, hard work. It took a lot out of you, but actually you got so much out of their experiences. But forgetting how to be a product.
The sort of the money making side of things kind of got which I have a tendency to do myself anyways, to not focus on that, and then having all these other beautiful young leaders with great ideas and also sort of with their own stories, each to their own, that needed sometimes a bit of guidance. I spend a lot of time doing guidance and then not so much thinking about how are we going to go to market and make some serious money from this to be able to continue in real life. That needed, if we didn't have the young leaders money, that would have never been possible, right? So yeah.
But somebody said to me, so was it successful though? If you take any of those experiments and that, was it, so, and the answer to that is, well, if you look at any project, let's take Sardines, doing hybrid conferences, was it? So if we measure the success in GDP terms and money and invoices and bills, the numbers, you say, well, no, it wasn't, it wasn't. But actually, is that really, if you're taking a cohort of young people who've all gone on to fantastic things, including the product owner, Elisa, and all of the young people, and look at their well-being as the measure. This is one of the most successful projects we've ever had, and I think that we need to frame success in terms, in story terms, not in numbers terms, because Sardines was part of the journey that you all went through, and the fact that the numbers might not have stacked up for everybody's benefit, who cares? Do you care? Do I care? Do any of the young leaders? And
that's good to hear. I always thought I disappointed you a little there. I lie
I'm
awake
here
at
to tell
night.
the world that
I
we
lie
don't
awake at
care
night.
about numbers.
But yes, in the like, I love to see. Sometimes I go on LinkedIn and look at all of the young leaders that were sometimes not just mine, but all of the ones that were that first cohort that I kind of knew really well.
Yeah. Yours.
Mine, we
My
work
leader.
together and in those kind of things. And I just kind of look what they're up to, and it's so nice, especially because it was such a hard time, and God knows, like, I mean, they would have been unemployed for some time, and would have rolled into a really horrendous job that would have completely hurt their creativity, and it would have taken them a lot longer to get out of it. And I don't want to take all the we shouldn't take all the credit for that, right? But like it was, there was a very nice buzz in a time where everything was falling apart around us. We were working towards really cool things. We were being creative. We were mentoring, like seeing like, hey, how can we do this? How are we getting there? What is your goal? I don't know what my goal is. How are we going to know what your goal is? Like, let's unpack. It was a very highly energetic time and a great time, and to be working with the young leaders, and that will always be the thing I take away, and not the the small projects that we did with Sardines, and I mean, Sardines is going to continue to live on in some kind of form, shape, or way, but yeah, the young leaders side of things is the thing I'm always going to remember. When I'm on my deathbed, I will be those young leaders, I hope. No, I mean, that's over exaggeration, but it was such a big part of me as well, that I really, at the moment, like you guys, I still do placements for University of Birmingham students. I always have one, like I have had 2 the last years. The new cohort is coming out now, just because I loved, that I do feel like now I have a little less time for it, and sometimes feel guilty, like, oh my god, I should to be more there for you. But I love that so much, and I still try and put that in there, and do mentoring every now and again for other people on the side or whatever, even just purely career side of things or whatever. Like, hey, what do you want? What is it that you want to do? I don't know. Let's figure it out.
So just like I asked you about Congo,
Yeah.
Nigerian conferences and that multi. So we've talked quite a bit about supporting the young people into work, and that's amazing. Now for you, what did you learn? What did you take to? We're now going to get onto management 3.0, happiness at work, and all of the now stuff. But before that, if you just reflect a tiny bit on what did you take? What was it that it gave you? Did it give you
Young
anything? Maybe it
leaders,
was like, well,
so
absolutely,
much, so much. I think it
yes,
really, also general, like the way so I'd in theory read a lot about new ways of management and new ways of leadership, but those were not being met
ah,
in the university, obviously. And then I come to you guys, and there was like, okay, there is a new way of management, there is a new way of leadership, and I really tried to also work like that with my young leaders. And I think that for me has been the most valuable thing, seeing that new way of working, seeing that remote way of working, completely remote way of working. And most of these young leaders, I've actually never, have I ever met any of them, actually?
yeah,
But I
yeah,
feel like I know all of them, right? Like, this, all of the experiments in
yeah.
remote working, in new ways of management and leadership, whereby human-centric leadership, of which I had read in books and of which I had admired, but I'd never felt at the heart that it can work. And now that's one of the big things I take away, and we'll move on to what I do sort of now. But that I'm such an advocate for that, and I'm such, because so go out in the world and say this is the way forward, only because I also saw it in practice.
It's interesting because when we started the project 25 years ago, almost, or now, um, we set it up as a remote work project
From the
right
get-go,
from
I
the
know, I
very
remember seeing
start,
that you said that.
um, and the technology was not there, but we did feel it viscerally, that you could get the kind of trust and human connection. You have to work hard at it. You have to work harder than you would by a water
Yeah.
cooler in an office, in a bubble that was a physical bubble. But you can do it anywhere, anyhow. So the pandemic was something for us of an accelerator for the whole world to kind of go on a. They're calling it hybrid at the moment. There seems to be a bit of a war between senior leadership of
Yeah.
ivory towers and employees who go, no, the policy says you need to be here 3 days a week, 2 days, and we're going to pay you more money. We're going to. EY were in the press. I read this week about looking at all the data of when you swipe in and out to get management reports to say, well, the policy says 3 days and you've only swiped in 2 days. So, it's like you're not living we'll give you a bigger bonus for people who have been in more.
Yeah. And there's new technology with people like some of the JP Morgan, like the big horrible banks, right? They have now got cameras in the offices. And they will they will actually see how much. So how you react to things, how happy you are, so that you don't have to put in employee satisfaction scores anymore and that kind of stuff. But that is going very far, and it's very scary. And that's also why a lot of apparently these big people want them back in the office, because they can basically monitor everything from on their faces nowadays. And you could do that from home, I'm guessing, as well. But
wow, yeah. And in a world of AI, that will all be automatically, generated, and you can just have a dashboard and go, at least, what you were looking
exactly.
really unhappy.
It's got nothing to do with you. It's because you have a camera on my face all the time. Anyways,
okay, so we're bringing us back to your story. We are you find Management 3.0. So what's that?
Well, they find me actually.
What you're doing.
So I think through actually the things that we were putting out with Sardines. So again, it's a part of the journey, isn't it? And it's very much through what we were able to do together that I get there. And Management 3.0 comes to me and says, hey, we really need somebody to help us organize virtual conferences, but potentially other types of events. And this is what we stand for. And I start reading their sort of mission and what they do, and I'm thinking, this is great, because this is exactly what we stand for at Ethos, but they're teaching this to other people, basically. So they're very much about human-centric. Management 3.0 is very much about human-centric management and leadership, as well as kind of just decentralized management structures, agile leadership, we could say, but whatever that entails is sometimes complicated, but very much putting sort of the people first. It could always just be almost summarized with people first. And the way they do this is they have this kind of modules and courses, mostly based on a book called Managing for Happiness. But then there's been built on that over the years, and they train people across the world. And they have this very kind of happy way of putting this out there, very creative. And I was like, oh god, this is amazing. And they are a completely remote company as well. So there's 9 people, there's 9 of us across the world. We do see each other twice a year at a team retreat, that's what we call it. But for the rest, we all just work through Slack and Zoom, whatever the tools, Miro a lot at the moment, whatever is available to us. And so all these new skills that I just learned throughout the pandemic with you guys, they could be put into action, and I could have a wider reach. So the first year I get hired quite late, actually, and there's already a virtual conference put in December. And so it's like all hands on deck, go. Managed to make there quite a successful conference, actually. Quite a lot of people came as well. So get to be super creative. I with what we do there, what's possible, as long as it fits in a budget, sort of kind of situation. And so in the meantime, we've managed to do a lot of very creative conferences, all out of the box. Most of them online. One hybrid conference in Berlin, and all of them have been fantastic from a human perspective. Not so necessarily when we're talking again from a financial perspective, because it's really hard in the events world nowadays to kind of make the money, especially if you're doing smaller events. If you're doing, I don't know, a Tomorrowland or even a major event with Simon Sinek or whatever, it's okay. But you need massive investment as well because of that. I mean, we can't all be Web Summit, but from a human perspective, again, from the stories that we have from the times that we gathered, very, very, very successful. So if we use that as a metric, super great.
So I want to now dive into the professional side of human-centric work and decentralize on that, because it was Annabelle Lambert who was 25 years ago evangelizing happiness at work, when
Yeah.
not only virtual work but happiness was frowned upon, because work needed to be serious. And now
Very serious.
you can't see it, a billboard behind you
Yeah.
called happiness at work. And then we're talking about human centric, like we got happy. This is 180 degrees from where work was 25. You'd be shocked
Yeah.
if you were to sort of say, I'm promoting human centric and happiness at work. Is that they want, you wear ties, you go into the
Everything
city,
is
you do
gray
all
and
this work.
depressing.
So before we talk about conferences, which I'd like to do a little bit, I'd just like your view on, what is human-centric work? What are businesses at the moment latching onto in terms of happiness and well-being and meaning and passion
Yeah.
and purpose and all of those things that you could kind of pull one string and it all comes with it. What do they want? Why do they want
Yeah.
it? Where are they now? Are they doing more of it,
I
less
think
of
it
it?
very much, I mean, there is a general trend, obviously, towards caring more about happiness at work, because it's not only, and this is what is good to tell the C-suite, but it is not just altruistic. It's not just, okay, that's nice, I care for my employees and their well-being. No, it's also for their bottom line. So there's less burnout. That means that there's less attrition. And as we know, it's hard to get new people, and it's very costly to get new people. In the end, our happy employees are way more creative. They're way more innovative. They are, there's all these insanely beautiful metrics on all the things that they are more when people are happy. And also there's just things around motivators, right? As long as our basic needs are met, I mean, Dan Pink, etc., they've done all this beautiful research into motivators that actually money isn't that big of a motivator as soon as we have that. And in this old world, the only motivator that you had there was money or benefits or pensions or anything like that. And if you can't get people to do more things, then you need to look at different motivators. And I think the third element in this respect is that we are moving at a lightning speed that needs people who are agile, adaptable, flexible, innovative, thinking. It's not just somebody in an ivory tower knowing everything. We need to talk to all of the people who are part of an organization, need to be thinking along in order to get the best results. It's no longer this slow process of bureaucracy that needs to be pushed through. Things need to happen really fast in order to change and adapt to the world around us. So happiness at work, while super good for all of us, and I think also more important from an altruistic perspective, especially going through the pandemic, is also a necessity. It's also a necessity for us to give.
Okay, so time for difficult questions. So earlier in the interview, you said uh, you'd read the books, but you hadn't felt it. You hadn't experienced this sort of decentralized new leadership style, etc. So in the C-suite, have they read the books? Have they experienced it? Do they feel it? Where are they on the journey? If you were to go at Elisa's journey and then the C-suite, and is that management 3.0's job to try and help to accelerate that experience side of it? And
Well,
where
the
are have they
C-suite,
read the books?
the
Have they
C-suite
experienced
knows
it?
of the. So this is obviously massively generalizing, right? Because obviously the C-suite is very diverse. But
Yeah.
on the whole, I would
Yeah.
say that the C-suite has read the books, or has understood, or has read the synopsis of the books. Probably not the whole book. Has read like the cheat sheets, so they know of the concepts. But they are not convinced yet. They don't believe in it yet, even though that the hard numbers are there. I mean, there's another big study that recently came out in 2023, which is incredible. Around it's the University of Oxford, Harvard, and Indeed.com coming together and talking and basically creating these hard numbers on people, on companies where well-being is really important. They do better financially as well as in satisfaction. So, but also this financially, they do better than the S&P 500, these companies. And so these kind of numbers are out there, but the C-suite hears them, sees them, but still doesn't really believe them. And I think what our job is at the moment, what we do mostly is we don't necessarily go to the C-suite. We go to the middle managers. We go to the people that actually are working together. And so we have some people, for example, the Schneider Electric, the giant Schneider Electric has a massive.
Mm-hmm.
We have
Yeah.
a few people in different countries, few middle managers, and one manager up, I think, as well, who are really invested in management 3.0. And so they're doing this from the containment of their little boxes. But there's every now and again shooting something up to the C-suite. Look what we've done. We've done something. We've taken your requirement of a yearly review, and we've done it slightly different, but we're still giving you the tick box exercise that you need at the end of the year. But so there's these little kind of dots across the world that are kind of starting to do it differently but within still the confinements of the big, within the rules of the big bosses still. And they're kind of shooting it up every now and again in the hope that maybe at some point they will actually see, damn, these teams are doing better than my other teams. And that it will evolve into that. There is obviously
Interesting. I mean, you could characterize sort of organizational change as top down. McKinsey go into C-suite and build a new strategy that says, okay, we need to be very human centric, or bottom up, which is what ethos is. It's like we're grassroots. We're very much at the bottom, working up. And then what you've said there is we're a bit middle out. We're shooting from the middle. And actually, between the three of us, maybe we'll. So I'll move on to my second question, which is about the pace of change. So we all. I want to challenge this in a very friendly way. We often say, "Oh, the pace of change! It's so much. It's prolific. It's massive. It's AI. It's all this." But actually, when you think about the needs of society and the needs of the planet, if you think of people and planet well-being, there's a growing body of absolutely genius level thinkers that say, we're going to run out of runway. We need to accelerate the pace of change, not slow it down, because we're going to have to do some things really, really differently. And therefore, from a sort of things like organizational behavioral change, bad technology, whatever bad technology, is moving at light years, but the behavioral technology, the behavior of what we're doing, we're doing the same things and expecting a different result. We radically need to move, the middle out, the bottom up, the top down more quickly. So you've got a bit of a dilemma, technology change, artificial general intelligence will be here in 3 minutes, and we won't be ready for it. And so, we need to accelerate the sort of behavioural change whilst in many ways slowing down the technological.
Yeah, it's really complicated, and I've thought about this as well before, and I've thought about this extensively because I think on the one hand, yes, everything is changing, but again, as what we started with, everything stays the same as well. We're still humans. There's still humans at the other end, and sometimes I feel like there was there was a tweet, or sorry, an X, whatever. Like, I mean, I'm not on X, but I see these sometimes, the good ones, on another site then, whereby there's this whole upheaval now, whereby basically Amazon Prime base is now charging, is now giving back. Sorry, is now doing commercials again. And basically, what this person was saying is like, they've just reinvented cable. Actually, what these disruptors all do is they corner the market, they come with something cool, and then actually they then revert it
Oh,
almost back to,
interesting.
say, like
Yeah.
Uber. You reinvented a taxi, right? Like this all these streaming services, they reinvent. And like, they just make it complicated, they take over the market. And I was thinking about this as well, in this change, kind of in the change debate, like, yeah, is this sort of willingly, or are we all these people still at heart that actually, you know, yearn back to like, it's easier, but then more, but there's something in the old model that is needed, or something like that we continuously go back to. So I don't know, all of that to say that I think about it. I think about the pace of it a lot, but I have no answers. I don't know how we go about this, because as people, we also have only this amount of mental stretch to accept change, and to work with change. And we can see that in our older generations. We can see that even for myself. Like, there is only from technology point of view, but also from ethical, moral, all of these kind of things. There's only so much bandwidth that we all have to change, and that doesn't mean that there can't be more in the future, etc. But there's only so much we can do, and so much we can comprehend. And I don't know how we go further with this. Whether there's something that we need to do, like you said, in order in order for us to not run out of runway, that we actually have to prioritize certain problems, or etc. But then everything is so interconnected, and then we get into theories around how one piece of the puzzle will lead to a chain reaction across everything else. So these complex theories blow my head off sometimes.
But I think what is always refreshing, Elisa, in talking to you is your honesty, because you're not telling us. And if if anybody tries to tell us, well, we've got the
No.
answer because we've got a new methodology. We've got a methodology that can say you do these three things and then you'll have a better world. It's obvious. It's like, I'm sorry, we know that
No.
there are no easy answers to this. So your honesty is still refreshing in a world where we tend to go to market with products and say, look, me too.
Yeah,
I've got the answer. I've got the and this is tough.
it is.
And therefore, we've got to experiment. We've got to
It
learn and
is. It is.
communicate
And I
more.
think what needs to just lie at the basis of all of it is humanity. But even in a world like ours at the moment, that is very difficult to keep that in mind. Yeah.
Diminishing.
And that's
Yeah.
very,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
feeling, I'm sort of listening to you talking about, the C-suite and the disconnect with them believing that this is true or not. And I feel that sort of goes right back to them considering themselves in a role with responsibilities rather than being a human
yeah,
being. It would be very interesting to peel that all back in those individuals and say, well, what do you think? How do you want to be treated? When do you operate better? Those questions, to sort of reflect really on that. Because and then even doing that, I still think it's really difficult for them to maneuver themselves out into creating something new. They are constrained by their organization,
and by their being, and by, yeah,
and
yeah.
that's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so showcases so often,
Mm.
and especially, and same with politics. A lot of people feel like it is their given right to be there, and if you ask them why, it's just it is why it is. And I and then once they get there, or people that you always hear these things like, once you make a lot of money, you don't care about people who don't make a lot of money. I completely disagree with
Well,
that, but yeah, there's these disconnects each time, right? That we recreate potentially. But if we keep if we keep at the bottom line keep saying, well, we're all the same, but what we started with, and we're all human, and connect and focus on the things that actually bind us, then maybe we have a chance. But we seem to be focusing a lot on the things that divide us at the moment again. So
Yeah, that's so beautiful, Elisa. That the takeaway, we're all the same. It's like, yes, let's start with that, and let's try and
yeah, let's start with
hold
that.
us together. Hold that thought. Start with it, hold it, and then things will become easier. If everybody was the same. But it doesn't mean that we can't live with capitalism, we can't live with economics, we can't live with nation states, we can't live with universities. But actually, if we started with the fact and finished with the fact that we're actually all the same, just occupy many different roles at many different points in our lives. It's a big idea, actually. It's a
the most
big
simple
idea.
ideas are often the biggest as well.
Yeah. All right. So, Annabelle, do you have any questions you want to ask?
No, I'm just raising the flag for, just to let Amazon know nobody wants adverts. The only reason for doing that could be to make more money. And do you really need that money? Because we're not happy about that. But anyway, not the money, the adverts. Yeah. You say, well, why? Anyway, just a small thing. But no.
Actually, I'd like to, for all the executives in Google, I'd like to make the same point for YouTube, please, as well, because and it's like, no, I don't want to pay 500. There must be a better business model for YouTube than adverts, because it just drives me mad that you want a soundbite of knowledge and you have to listen to some bodybuilding expert for, whatever.
I love that's what you get, Rob, bodybuilders. I would say that's
I get office.
Yeah, me too. I get like Monday.com and that kind of thing.
Yeah, all the time, Monday.com.
Grammarly and that kind of stuff. But sure, you get bodybuilders. Okay, cool.
Full disclosure, I made that up. I don't want you to know what I actually get served. Yes,
liar.
Yeah. Anyways,
anyway.
I mean, I'm sometimes scared to look anything up in the just to know, not anything bad, right? Just to go like, oh, I don't want to have lamps for the next 50 years on my Instagram or my Facebook. Like, I don't want to. I was looking at wallpaper 5 weeks ago, just because somebody was talking about wallpaper or about something like, hey, have a look at this one. Now I'm every day have to look at rolls and rolls of wallpaper. I mean, we're a world where we're actually afraid not to click on links for phishing or whatever, just so because we're like, I don't want to get spammed with this.
Okay, Lisa, it's been amazing.
Yeah, lovely.
Just final, is there anything else you want to add or talk about?
No, I think like we've been all on all different planets of Elisa. I feel like we've made it very circular with saying we're all the same, and so that I feel like needs to be. Yeah, let's all try and focus on what binds us together. And that also goes, let's always focus on the good things. Whether that is in your work life, stop focusing on that you're not great at Excel or whatever. You're very good at something else. And that is, and so focus on these things. And same within the group, focus on what binds you together and not what separates you. And that goes from work to nations, let's say it like that.
Annabelle, you normally like to ask a final question.
But is there anything particular that we could do, to help?
I think what's great is what's a very nice introductory to what we all talk about, because we've just talked about so many things and it can go so many different ways, is also listen to the podcast that we do with Management 3.0, the Happiness at Work podcast. It's been going since 2016. Was the first podcast then on happiness at work, like in its infancy back in the day, and now lots of people around the world absolutely love listening to it, and we try and get as many cool people and new voices in as well, and same people from the industry who are doing it different and are showcasing how they are doing it different. So if you're whether you want to convince your boss or somebody else that this is the way forward, then you can find some pointers there. If you just want to hear some feel good stories in the sense of that, also there, but we'll sometimes also very depressive stories. Like, we've got it all there, and I think that's a very good start if you wanted to bring some more happiness at work to your own people or in your own life, so it's a great one to start. So most of the episodes are all available on any of the streaming platforms, or you have them also on the management3.0.com website, where there's a tab podcasts, and then you can read a little bit more about the people that are on the podcast as well.
Fantastic.
Lisa, thank you very much.
Links all over the blurb at the bottom of the podcast as well. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for your time, Elisa. We will no doubt speak again. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.